Hello and welcome to GBM Media Podcast from Grace Baptist Mission. You're about to hear Serving Today, a programme for pastors and church leaders. If you're involved in any form of Bible teaching or discipling others, perhaps one-to-one or in a small setting, whatever the age group, Serving Today will be helpful to a wide range of believers. Welcome to Serving Today, the programme for pastors and church leaders. This is Andrew Cook. I'm pleased to be with you once again. The Minor Prophets, the series returns. And the Incommunicable Attributes of God, we're joined by Bill James. For many years here on Serving Today, we've been going through a survey of the Old Testament. Well, we return to this series with more on the Minor Prophets. As we've mentioned before, although the Minor Prophets are shorter books, they're no less important parts of the Old Testament. And to help us with these are Philip Parsons and Derek French.
Philip, Habakkuk is another short book amongst the Minor Prophets, just 3 chapters. Tell us about the prophet and the setting for the book.
Yes, well, we can actually date the book of Habakkuk quite precisely at around 610 BC. And this is because it has the prediction of the rise of the Babylonian power as an instrument of judgment upon the nations of the Middle East. And that gives us the date, because that's when that happened.
Right.
And so Habakkuk is contemporary with Josiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the young Daniel. And he almost certainly lived through the troubled times of the final days of the kingdom of Judah from 606 to 586 BC.
And what about the content of the book?
Well, the main theme and concern of the book is that at the beginning, Habakkuk expresses his concern over the violence and injustice which had become rife in Judah. That's shown for us in chapter 1, verses 2 to 4, which, if you could read that for us, Derek, please.
Yes, certainly. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted.
Yes, he's obviously very concerned about it, and he's concerned that God doesn't seem to be doing anything about it in answer to his cry.
It's the old problem of the prosperity of the wicked, isn't it?
That's right, yes. Well, in response, the Lord answers the prophet with a vision of the destruction that is to come upon Judah and Jerusalem at the hands of the Babylonians. That's the succeeding verses of chapter 1. But this answer from the Lord leads the prophet to a new problem. He is concerned because although the sins of Judah warranted God's punishment, how could God remain just and punish his people using such an ungodly and wicked instrument? Again, the latter part of chapter 1, verses 12 to 17. As we've said, it is the age-old problem of the prosperity of the wicked, which is addressed in Psalm 73. But God then speaks to his servant and shows him the final end of the godless Babylonians. Yes, they have been raised up as an instrument of judgment against the people of God, but they will not go unpunished for their evil ways. And 4 woes are pronounced against these ruthless, greedy, and idolatrous people. That is in chapter 2. All of these predictions of judgment were fulfilled when the kingdom of Babylon was suddenly overthrown by Cyrus the Persian on the fateful night of Belshazzar's feast, and that's recorded for us just briefly in Daniel 5, verses 30 and 31.
That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62.
Darius the Mede was the ruler who was put in place by Cyrus in Babylon. Cyrus was the emperor of Persia, and he was organising the campaign, but obviously when Babylon fell, he needed somebody to rule the capital so that he could carry on with his campaign. So he set up Darius the Mede as the ruler at that time.
Right.
When the prophet sees this end result, it helps him, and he concludes his book with a prayer in which he recognises the sovereignty of God in executing his judgments throughout the earth. As for Habakkuk himself, come what may, whether it be famine, disease, war, invasion, he will not fear, but will rejoice in his God and his Redeemer. And I think that's a good position for a Christian to be able to come to in the face of difficulties and what he sees as maybe God's slowness to act.
And there are many things that do perplex us, don't they, as believers?
Yes.
But, we need to just rest in God, don't we, and trust him and rejoice in him.
Yes.
That he knows what he's doing.
Yes, that final passage, where he says, though there be no fruit on the vine or the fig tree, though there's no cattle in the stalls, yet will I. It's one of these, though this happens, yet
I will still trust
the Lord. A bit like Daniel's friends. Our God is able to deliver us, but if not, that's really where we should aim to be as Christians, not just influenced by circumstances, not just fair weather Christians, but those who will trust in God, whatever the circumstances, knowing that he does all things well.
Well, now on Serving Today, we have the opportunity to hear a series which was first broadcast some years ago, and it's on doctrine. For this, we're pleased to welcome Bill James, who is now the principal of a Bible seminary in the United Kingdom. When I met with Bill, I asked him to explain what we mean by doctrine.
Okay, doctrine is simply a summary of the Bible's teaching on any subject. So, for example, if you look at the doctrine of God, then it brings together all of the Bible's teachings on the subject of God. And it's not just my personal private interpretation of the Bible on the subject, but it's an expression of what Bible-believing Christians have believed and held to over the centuries.
And in this particular programme, and indeed the next few programmes, we're asking the question, what is God like? What are the characteristics or attributes of God? Bill, what distinctions do theologians make when referring to the attributes of God?
Okay, theologians speak of both communicable and incommunicable attributes. The communicable attributes are aspects of God's being which we share with him. So, for example, his love, his justice, his wisdom. And the incommunicable attributes are characteristics in which God is different to us. So, for example, his eternity, his unchangeableness, his omnipresent, that he is present in all places and at all times. And of course, by nature, we are not unchangeable or omnipresent.
And can you tell us if there is a clear distinction between what we call the communicable and incommunicable attributes of God?
It's not an absolute division because we don't perfectly share God's communicable attributes. We can say that we are loving as God is loving, but we're not perfectly loving as God is. We're not perfectly just or wise as he is. And then on the other side, God's incommunicable attributes are not entirely alien to us. So, for example, in glory, we will share in God's eternity. But nevertheless, it's a useful working distinction. In this programme, we're focusing in particular on God's incommunicable attributes.
How would you go about showing that from the Bible, from Scripture?
We're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 3 and verses 13 to 14, which describe God appearing to Moses in the burning bush. Andrew, perhaps you could read that for us, please.
Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you."
Notice that God describes himself in that text as I am. That's a very striking name. He has no beginning and no end. He is the eternal God. But more than just being eternal, he is uncreated. Each one of us as human beings has a beginning, the moment of our conception or the moment of our birth into the world. There was a time before that when we were not, and we depended on someone else to bring us into being. Indeed, that's true of all created things. But God has always been I am. No one brought God into being. This is known theologically as the independence of God. He has no creator. Moses says later in Psalm 90 that from everlasting to everlasting you are God.
And Bill, can you tell us what are the implications of this truth of the independence of God for us?
Well, it means simply that God has no need of any outside source of life or support or help. Now you see how completely different that is from our own experience. We depend upon God for the gift of life. We're constantly needy individuals. We need the air we breathe. We need our food and drink. Our happiness depends on God and other creatures for personal relationships. But God, by way of contrast, is complete and he is whole and he is content in his own being. He needs no one. He needs nothing. All of his needs for personal relationships are satisfied from eternity past within the persons of the Trinity. And so God is the I am. He is perfectly sufficient and content within his own being. So you see, God had no need to create the world. He lacks nothing. Andrew, perhaps you could read Acts chapter 17, verse 25.
And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else.
You can see from that text that he has no anxieties or concerns regarding the future. He is the I am from eternity past to eternity future. What is extraordinary about this text in Exodus is that the I am has not only chosen to create the world, but to set his love upon unworthy, sinful beings like ourselves. Moses is too sinful even to be allowed to approach the burning bush, and yet God has compassion on him and on the people of Israel. He does not need them, but he loves them. He enters into covenant relationship with the people, and he is committed to providing for them. He hears their cry, you see in verses 16 and 17 of that chapter. He has mercy on them in their need. And so graciously he provides for us. We are totally dependent upon him for all things, and we rejoice in his provision.
And we look forward to Bill James being with us again next time here on Serving Today for another study on the incommunicable attributes of God. So until then, this is Andrew Cook saying goodbye. May God bless you as you serve the Lord Jesus Christ. Thanks for listening to Serving Today, a podcast from the Grace Baptist Mission radio team. To get in touch with us, you can send us a message via WhatsApp. The number is +44 74 44 05 8370. That's +44 74 44 05 8370. Or the email address is servingtoday@gbm.org.uk. Until next time, goodbye.